Save the queen of Corona. Against the law. It was against the law. Goodbye to Rose. Save the queen of Corona.
Hi everybody, Dr. Minnow here again. Still reporting on some of this coronavirus crap going on around the world. Anyway, this video coming up has to do with the immoral practices of the medical profession in the hospitals and in the doctors, even included with this whole coronavirus stuff. The first clip is from David Icke, and he's going to explain to you how the paybacks going to the hospitals, that they are getting substantially more money from the health systems, Medi-Cal and Medicare and all these other type of programs, for documenting a death by coronavirus where it's in the $30,000s of dollars that they'll receive funding for, as opposed to a regular flu or pneumonia, which is, you know, $1,200 to $1,500. Anyway, don't quote me on all these figures. Listen to David Icke, and he's going to explain all this to you, all the kickbacks. This is why the corona death stats are so much higher, because of the kickbacks, the medical kickbacks to the hospitals. The second video clip, I submitted it in 2014, is with the Max Keiser report, and it's called the Drive-By Doctoring, where if you're lying in a coma or drugged out, and the other doctors know that, they all call their little buddies up and send their little specialists by, and as they explain to you, they just go by and wave at you, and then they charge you over $100,000 just for a drive-by visit. So this has been going on for years. I put this out, like I said, in 2014. This was going on back then, and you can be assured this crap is going on now. Now, the problem and the issues I raised back in 2014 is that you'll be lying in the hospital in a coma, and you'll wake up, and your house is gone. The hospital owns it. People don't realize when they sign these contracts and you're all drugged out, and these contracts are made up, even buying a car or a house or anything, where you have the light gray scale text on goldenrod or pink or chartreuse or whatever color paper. It's intentionally designed for you not to read the whole contract. It puts stress on your eyes. They intentionally set this up and con you. Everything's a con job. The United States and capitalism, everything's a con job. Everybody's trying to stab everybody else in the backs. But this is where doctors are making extra money, and it's kind of humorous how they approach it. You know, they got special beepers, go, hey, we got a stool here, come on by, you know. And maybe these other doctors who refer other doctors get their kickbacks. Anyway, watch these two clips. It's a really sad situation of our medical system and what's going on today with the coronavirus.
Not only are they telling doctors and medical staff that if someone test positive for COVID-19, they must, and they die, they must have that on the death certificate. There's financial incentives. There's a Minnesota state senator in America called Scott Jensen, doctor himself. And he did an interview in which he pointed out that the Medicare health operation in America has a series of payments that it gives to hospitals in different situations. Wait for this if you haven't come across it. If a hospital now diagnoses someone with regular pneumonia, nothing to do with COVID-19, regular pneumonia, they get paid through the Medicare system $4,600. If they diagnose a COVID-19 caused pneumonia, the hospitals get $13,000. And if they put a COVID-19 diagnosed patient on a ventilator, they get $39,000. So you're looking at a payout of tens and tens of thousands of dollars if you put COVID-19 as a diagnosis and put them on a ventilator, which would make some sense, would it not, of what that doctor said. We're not allowed that interim response machine now. We have to go straight to a ventilator, and we have to let people crash to justify the ventilator. And he was confirming this whole thing. And we have seen more and more doctors come out, but the vast majority have not. The vast majority of medical staff have not. Some of them are too busy making dancing videos in empty hospital wards. But they need to, because if they don't, they're going to regret not doing so for the rest of their life.
It's a $2.8 trillion annual healthcare ghetto in America, and drive-by doctoring is impoverishing the community that walks this ghetto. After surgery, surprise $117,000 medical bill from doctor he didn't know. This was Peter Dreyer, and he's works in financial services industry in New York. And he went in to get his a spine fuse. He had a herniated disc or something. And he got his medical bill, and he saw that, Lenox Medical Center was paid something like $50,000. His orthopedist was paid $156,000 or $133,000, and he was all fine with that. But then he noticed another item, $117,000. And it turns out that while he was under, some guy came by, looked at him, and just briefly in this 3-hour surgery, and then left and charged $117,000. Now, Peter Dreyer says, quote, "I thought I understood the risks," Mr. Dreyer, who lives in New York City, said later, "but this was just so wrong. I had no choice and no negotiating power." They call this drive-by doctoring.
This isn't just dentists giving their patients goofy gas and having sex with them. This is a whole magnitude, other level of depravity. I think this is also an example of what happens when you put everyone's data onto a central database. And of course, the medical industry claims that they need access to that medical database. So I'm sure in this case, you mentioned the fellow worked in financial services. They saw that he had 100 or 200 or 500,000 or $1 million in cash in his checking account. So they said, you know what, let's just take some of that. So I'll just drop by the bed and wave, maybe do the signal of the cross or something. It's like a papal indulgence back to the Middle Ages. You give this guy $100,000 for having, given you a papal indulgence, and you too can benefit from the wisdom of going directly into financial nirvana. But this is, again, big data. Big data is a risk.
So drive-by doctoring, okay, and I'll explain more about what happens. The phenomenon can take many forms. In some instances, a patient may be lying on a gurney in the emergency room or in a hospital bed, unaware that all of the people in white coats or scrubs who turn up at the bedside will charge for their services. At times, a fully trained physician is called in when a resident or nurse would not charge, would have sufficed. Services that were once included in the daily hospital rate are now often provided by contractors, and even many emergency rooms are staffed by out-of-network physicians who bill separately. So here is a system that, by the way, it's a broken system, just like this United Kingdom that the Scottish people decided to remain part of, that Americans will always vote for. They really like this system, but it's hyper contractualized, compartmentalized, and there's so many different things that used to just be part of the normal service of going to a hospital, and a nurse would walk by and say, hey, now they charge you like up $500, $600, $700 for the nurse to go, hey, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm sure that they'll get a beeper on their it's an app that they have on their smartphone. The word gets out that there's a guy with a lot of cash in his bank account knocked out on a gurney somewhere in a hospital. So these white-coated rats come around and they claim that they were in the room and offering consultation. They need $50,000, $100,000, $200,000. So again, it goes out as a beacon for doctoring fraud in America. Oh, run to Lenox Hill Hospital, file into this guy's room while he's unconscious, and bill him $50,000. We know he can afford it because we have access to his medical records and all his banking records because we lobbied the government to allow us access to all this information to stop being attacked from existential threats. Forget about doctors just stealing money from people.
Here again, like this guy, Peter Dreyer, who got charged the $117,000, he was unconscious. He didn't know. And he's pretty savvy in that he talked to his doctors beforehand and wanted to know exactly what was going to happen, who he would see. He knew this sort of, being from the financial services sector, he knew about fraud. So he knew, to basically prepare himself for this. He was never, he never gave his consent to this happening.
But this is an old trick used on Wall Street. I was still working on Wall Street. The guy who I worked for, who was an ex-Lehman broker, he would call up his clients that were in the hospital and either about to become unconscious or unconscious and claim they had put orders in to buy stocks and bonds at the market and book them all the commission. So this is another trick that Wall Street has taught the world, in this case the medical profession, how to extort people out of their cash by taking advantage of them when they're unconscious and in the hospital.
Okay, now in this case,